Underground missile facilities across Iran are now reportedly locked onto Tel Aviv and every major population center in Israel. And according to Iranian military commanders, those launch systems are already armed and operational. Welcome to Legal Lens USA. I am your host, David Reynolds. What you are about to hear will fundamentally change how you understand the current military balance in the Middle East and the strategic vulnerability that Israel now faces, despite decades of investment in defensive infrastructure. Before we go any further, if you are new here, hit that like button and subscribe right now, because we cover developments like this before mainstream outlets even acknowledge they exist, and we break them down in a way that cuts through the official narratives to show you what is actually happening on the ground. Deep beneath the mountains and desert terrain of western and central Iran, an extensive network of underground missile facilities has been constructed over the past 2 decades, representing one of the most ambitious military infrastructure projects in modern Middle Eastern history. These are not simple storage bunkers or crude weapons caches. According to multiple reports from Iranian state media, Western intelligence assessments, and independent satellite imagery analysis, these facilities represent hardened, deeply buried command and launch complexes designed to survive initial strikes and maintain retaliatory capability even under sustained attack. The installations stretch across multiple provinces, with concentrated clusters in areas west of Tehran, throughout the Zagros mountain range, and in strategic positions that provide optimal launch geometry toward Israeli population centers. Iranian military officials have stated publicly that these underground facilities house ballistic missile systems specifically configured for long-range precision strikes, with Tel Aviv, Haifa, and other major Israeli cities programmed as priority targets in the event of conflict escalation. The construction of these facilities reflects sophisticated engineering adapted to Iran's specific strategic requirements. Unlike surface installations that remain vulnerable to airstrikes despite hardening measures, deeply buried facilities exploit natural geological protection. Mountains in the Zagros range provide hundreds of meters of rock overhead, creating natural shielding that renders conventional penetrating munitions ineffective. According to technical assessments from defense analysts who have studied satellite imagery of suspected sites, the facilities utilize multiple layers of protection, including reinforced concrete portals, redundant access tunnels, and internal compartmentalization that allows continued operations even if surface structures are destroyed. The missile systems themselves remain stored in climate-controlled environments deep underground until launch preparations begin, at which point they are transported through tunnel networks to hardened launch positions that can be opened, used, and sealed again within minutes. Iranian defense officials have described these installations as the cornerstone of the country's strategic deterrence doctrine, ensuring that even if surface military infrastructure is destroyed in an initial strike, the underground missile network would survive to deliver devastating retaliation. This capability fundamentally alters the strategic calculus that has governed Israeli military planning for decades. The traditional Israeli approach to neutralizing threats involves preemptive strikes that destroy enemy capabilities before they can be employed. That doctrine worked effectively against surface installations in Syria, Iraq, and Lebanon, where aircraft could deliver precision strikes that eliminated threats before they materialized. But underground facilities protected by hundreds of meters of solid rock present an entirely different challenge, one that current Israeli capabilities may not be able to solve. The missiles housed in these underground facilities represent a range of Iranian ballistic missile systems, each designed for specific strategic functions. The Segil medium-range ballistic missile, which uses solid fuel, allowing rapid launch preparation, can reach targets across Israel from launch sites in western Iran. Iranian sources claim the Segil achieves ranges exceeding 2,000 kilometers with maneuverable warheads that complicate interception. The Ghadr missile family, derived from North Korean designs but progressively refined through Iranian engineering, provides additional medium-range strike capability, with reported accuracy improvements that allow targeting of specific infrastructure rather than simply area bombardment. More recently, the Khaybar Shikan missile, unveiled in Iranian military parades and reportedly tested multiple times, incorporates maneuverable re-entry vehicles that adjust trajectory during final approach, making interception significantly more difficult than traditional ballistic missiles that follow predictable parabolic paths. But the weapon generating the most concern among Israeli defense planners is the Fatah hypersonic missile, a system that Iranian officials claim can defeat all current Israeli air defense networks. The Fatah does not follow the predictable trajectory of conventional ballistic missiles that arc through space and re-enter the atmosphere on a calculable path. Instead, it deploys a hypersonic glide vehicle that remains within the atmosphere, maneuvering at extreme speeds that current interceptor systems were not designed to counter. Iranian military officials have stated that the Fatah achieves velocities exceeding Mach 13, traveling at approximately 16,000 kilometers per hour. At that speed, a missile launched from western Iran reaches Tel Aviv in under 8 minutes. 8 minutes from launch detection to impact. That time frame includes detection, confirmation, command decision-making, interceptor launch, and engagement. For perspective, the entire decision cycle from warning to response must occur in less time than it takes to brew a pot of coffee. The technical challenge of intercepting hypersonic weapons fundamentally differs from conventional ballistic missile defense. Traditional systems like Israel's Arrow interceptors were designed to engage targets following predictable ballistic trajectories. Radar systems track the missile's initial trajectory, computers calculate the future path, and interceptors are launched to meet the incoming warhead at a predicted point. That approach works when targets follow physics-determined paths. But hypersonic glide vehicles do not follow predetermined paths. They maneuver continuously during flight, adjusting course to evade interceptors or optimize attack angles. The speed at which they travel compresses reaction time, while the maneuverability defeats prediction-based interception. It is not simply a matter of faster interceptors. The fundamental engagement geometry breaks down when targets can alter their path faster than interceptors can adjust. According to Iranian sources and regional military analysis, the underground facilities now house substantial numbers of these advanced missile systems, positioned and prepared for potential employment against Israeli targets. Iranian Revolutionary Guard commanders have made public statements claiming that missile forces maintain constant readiness, with launch crews trained to execute strikes within minutes of receiving authorization. Iranian state media has broadcast footage purporting to show underground facilities with missiles positioned on transport erectors, ready for movement to launch positions. While the authenticity and currency of such footage cannot be independently verified, the strategic messaging is clear. Iran wants Israel and the United States to understand that its retaliatory capability cannot be eliminated through preemptive strikes. The evidence supporting Iran's claims about underground missile capabilities comes from multiple sources, some of which provide unexpected validation. Satellite imagery analysis conducted by independent organizations, including the Middlebury Institute of International Studies, has identified numerous suspected underground facilities across Iran, based on distinctive surface features, including reinforced portals, ventilation systems, and access road networks that suggest subsurface construction. These installations appear in locations that provide optimal launch geometry toward Israeli targets, while exploiting natural geological protection. The pattern of construction, spanning more than 15 years and involving facilities across multiple provinces, indicates systematic strategic planning rather than isolated projects. But it was not Iranian military officials alone who confirmed the severity of the threat posed by Iran's advanced missile systems. Israeli defense industry executives have gone on record acknowledging that current defensive systems face fundamental challenges against hypersonic weapons. Yuval Bazisi, vice president of Rafael Advanced Defense Systems, the Israeli company that develops many of the interceptor missiles employed by Israeli air defense networks, stated publicly that hypersonic missiles represent a new era in aerial threats that traditional defense approaches cannot reliably counter. Drawing an analogy to basketball, Bazisi said that attempting to intercept a hypersonic missile with current systems is like defending LeBron James with a single player. You can chase him, but you will not stop him from scoring. Let that sink in for a moment. The vice president of the company that builds Israel's interceptor missiles is telling the world that the systems he helped develop cannot handle what Iran now deploys. That admission carries extraordinary significance because it comes not from Iranian propagandists seeking to exaggerate capabilities, but from Israeli defense industry insiders with every incentive to project confidence in their own systems. When the people building your defensive shield publicly acknowledge that it cannot stop specific threats, the strategic implications become impossible to dismiss. Israeli military planners have spent billions of dollars constructing layered air defense networks designed to intercept everything from short-range rockets to intercontinental ballistic missiles. The Iron Dome system handles short-range threats. David's Sling addresses medium-range missiles. Arrow interceptors engage long-range ballistic missiles outside the atmosphere. But hypersonic glide vehicles that maneuver within the atmosphere at extreme speeds fall into a capability gap that current systems were not designed to address. The strategic implications of Iran's underground missile network extend far beyond the immediate military balance between Tehran and Tel Aviv. For decades, Israeli security doctrine has rested on the assumption that its military could eliminate existential threats through preemptive action before those threats materialized into actual attacks. That doctrine worked when threats consisted of surface installations that could be identified, targeted, and destroyed. Iraqi nuclear facilities at Osirak, Syrian nuclear construction at Al-Kibar, weapons convoys in Syria and Lebanon, all fell to Israeli strikes that eliminated threats before they became operational. But underground facilities protected by hundreds of meters of rock and housing missiles that can reach Israel in minutes fundamentally challenge that approach. You cannot preemptively destroy what you cannot reach, and you cannot intercept what moves too fast and maneuvers too unpredictably for your defensive systems. What does this mean for the broader strategic landscape? It means that Israel now faces a category of threat that its conventional military superiority cannot easily neutralize. The Israeli Air Force remains one of the most capable air forces on the planet. Israeli intelligence services have demonstrated remarkable reach and effectiveness. Israeli missile defense systems represent cutting-edge technology. But none of those advantages solve the problem of deeply buried missile facilities housing weapons that travel faster than existing defenses can handle. Developing new defensive systems capable of engaging hypersonic threats will require years of research, engineering, and testing, followed by manufacturing and deployment. Even with unlimited funding, which Israel does not possess, the timeline for fielding effective hypersonic defense extends well beyond the immediate strategic horizon. In the meantime, every major population center in Israel exists under a new kind of threat, one that cannot be easily mitigated through existing defensive measures or preemptive strikes. Iranian military commanders have stated explicitly that in the event of major Israeli strikes against Iranian nuclear facilities or critical infrastructure, the underground missile network would deliver devastating retaliation against Israeli cities. That threat, whether or not Iranian officials would actually execute it, changes the calculus surrounding any potential Israeli military action against Iran. The question is no longer simply whether Israel possesses the capability to strike Iranian nuclear sites. The question becomes whether Israel can accept the potential consequences of such strikes, given Iran's demonstrated retaliatory capability. The implications extend to the United States as well, which maintains extensive military presence across the Middle East and has consistently supported Israeli security. American bases in Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates all fall within range of Iranian missile systems. American naval forces operating in the Persian Gulf and surrounding waters face similar threats. The same hypersonic capabilities that challenge Israeli defenses would pose equal challenges to American defensive systems. U.S. Patriot and THAAD missile defense batteries stationed throughout the region were designed to engage conventional ballistic threats, not maneuvering hypersonic weapons. If conflict erupts between Iran and Israel, American forces throughout the region would operate under threat from weapons that current defenses cannot reliably stop. According to United States military officials and statements released through Central Command, American defensive systems remain fully operational and capable of protecting U.S. forces and interests in the region. Pentagon spokespersons have emphasized the sophistication and effectiveness of layered air defense networks deployed across Middle Eastern installations. The official narrative maintains that American military technology continues to provide comprehensive protection against Iranian missile threats. These statements, delivered with confidence through official channels and amplified through supportive media coverage, present a picture of continued American military superiority and defensive adequacy that should reassure allies and deter adversaries. But that official narrative exists in tension with independent technical assessments and the physical realities of hypersonic weapons. Defense industry publications, including Jane's Defense Weekly, and analysis from institutions like the Center for Strategic and International Studies, have published detailed examinations of hypersonic threat characteristics and the challenges they pose to existing defensive systems. These analyses, conducted by experts without direct institutional interest in either minimizing or exaggerating threats, consistently identify significant capability gaps between current defensive systems and the requirements for engaging maneuvering hypersonic weapons. The fundamental physics of intercept geometry, the computational challenges of tracking and predicting maneuverable targets, and the compressed timelines involved all point toward genuine defensive limitations, regardless of official assurances. The conflicting narratives, Iranian claims of unstoppable capability versus American and Israeli assertions of continued defensive adequacy, create an atmosphere of strategic uncertainty that itself carries destabilizing potential. When adversaries genuinely believe that their weapons cannot be stopped, they may calculate that escalation carries acceptable risk. When defenders genuinely believe their systems remain effective, they may undertake actions that provoke responses they cannot actually handle. The gap between perception and reality in military capability assessments has historically contributed to catastrophic miscalculation, and the current disconnect between official confidence and technical reality suggests dangerous potential for strategic surprise. For observers trying to assess the actual state of affairs, the evidence points toward genuine Iranian capability advancement that has outpaced defensive system development. The combination of satellite imagery showing extensive underground construction, Iranian military statements describing advanced missile deployments, independent technical analysis identifying defensive capability gaps, and most significantly, Israeli defense industry acknowledgement that current systems cannot reliably counter hypersonic threats, all converge on a consistent picture. Iran has developed and deployed missile capabilities that pose serious challenges to existing Israeli and American defensive networks, and those capabilities operate from underground facilities that cannot be easily eliminated through preemptive strikes. Whether that assessment proves accurate will potentially become clear only if conflict actually erupts and capabilities are tested under combat conditions. But strategic planning cannot wait for empirical verification that arrives only after missiles have already launched and defensive systems have either succeeded or failed. The decisions being made right now by Israeli, American, and Iranian leadership all rest on assessments of capability and vulnerability that may or may not align with actual performance under stress. That uncertainty itself represents a strategic danger because it creates space for miscalculation by actors operating with incomplete or inaccurate understanding of what their weapons can do and what their opponent's defenses can stop. So where does this leave the region? It leaves Israel facing a category of threat that its traditional military advantages do not easily solve. It leaves the United States managing alliances and commitments while acknowledging, at least privately, that defensive systems may not perform as advertised under certain conditions. It leaves Iran with capabilities that provide strategic deterrence against the preemptive strikes that have historically neutralized threats to Israeli security. And it leaves the entire region operating under conditions where the actual military balance remains contested and uncertain, creating potential for catastrophic miscalculation if any party initiates conflict based on incorrect assumptions about capability. This is a story that continues to develop, with new satellite imagery, new Iranian military statements, and new assessments from defense analysts emerging regularly. Legal Lens USA will keep you updated as this situation evolves and new information becomes available. If this analysis helped you understand the strategic dynamics that mainstream coverage often oversimplifies or ignores, please share this video with someone who needs to see it, and drop a comment below. Do you think Israel and the United States have credible answers to Iran's underground missile network right now? Or has the strategic balance fundamentally shifted in ways that conventional military superiority cannot easily reverse? Let us know what you think, because this conversation matters, and your perspective matters. The underground facilities are built, the missiles are deployed, the strategic equation has changed. What happens next depends on how accurately each side understands not just their own capabilities, but their opponents as well. And in that assessment, the margin for error has never been smaller.